The morning started like any other Tuesday. I was sitting in my home office, reviewing quarterly reports for my small accounting firm, when my phone started vibrating across the desk. Jessica's name lit up the screen 3 times in rapid succession before I finally picked up. "Mom, we need to talk." Her voice had that rehearsed quality I'd learned to recognize over the years. The tone she used when she'd already made a decision and was simply informing me of the outcome. My name is Catherine Rose Wells, and at 59 years old, I thought I understood my daughter. I'd raised her practically alone after my husband Richard took that overseas engineering position when the kids were small. 28 years of marriage, most of it spent managing our household solo while he worked in Dubai, Singapore, Jakarta. I'd built my accounting practice from nothing, raised 2 children, maintained our home, and managed every crisis that arose. Life had taught me to spot trouble before it arrived at my doorstep. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what was about to unfold. "What's going on, sweetheart?" I asked, setting down my coffee mug, a ceramic piece Jessica had made for me in high school pottery class. It said, "World's Best Mom," in slightly crooked letters. "Everything's wonderful, actually. Everything's finally falling into place." She paused, and in that brief silence I felt something shift in the air, like the atmospheric pressure change before a storm. "Brandon proposed 3 months ago. I know I should have told you sooner, but we've been so busy planning. We're getting married next month, Mom. Small ceremony, just close friends and family." "Jessica, that's wonderful news," I said, genuinely happy despite the short notice. "I'm so excited for you both. Have you set a date?" "October 15th. I'll send you the details." Another pause. "But that's not why I called. Brandon and I have been working on something big. His tech startup finally got interest from major venture capitalists. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for, Mom. Brandon's designed this revolutionary data security platform that could change everything about how companies protect client information." I smiled, remembering her enthusiasm for her fiancé's various projects. Brandon Mitchell was her 3rd serious relationship in 5 years. A smooth-talking entrepreneur with big dreams, and from what I'd observed, limited follow-through. But Jessica loved him, and that was what mattered. "That sounds exciting, honey. I hope it works out for you both." "It will work out, because I've already handled the financial arrangements." Her voice shifted, becoming more businesslike. "We need capital to show the investors we're serious. You know how it works, Mom. They want to see that we have skin in the game before they'll commit their funding. So I took care of it. I liquidated your investment accounts and transferred the funds to our business account. $340,000. It's the perfect amount to demonstrate serious commitment without overextending." My hand froze halfway to my coffee cup. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your investment portfolio. I transferred it to our startup account. Don't worry. Once the venture capital comes through, we'll have plenty to pay you back with interest. You'll actually make money on this deal, Mom." The room tilted slightly. "Jessica, those are my retirement investments. You can't just—" "I already did. The transfers processed yesterday." Her tone was matter-of-fact, as if she'd simply borrowed $20 for lunch. "And there's something else? I listed your house for sale last week. We got a cash offer this morning, $450,000. I accepted it. The closing is scheduled for 6 weeks from now, which gives you 45 days to pack up and find a new place. Honestly, Mom, you've been saying for years that the house is too big for one person. This is perfect timing." I started laughing. Not a small, polite chuckle, but a deep, rolling laugh that started in my belly and erupted like a geyser. I laughed so hard, tears formed in my eyes, so hard I had to set down my phone for a moment to catch my breath. "Mom? Mom, are you okay? What's so funny?" I wiped my eyes, still chuckling. "Oh, Jessica. Oh, sweetheart. You have no idea what you've just done." "What I've done is secure our future. Brandon's and mine. And honestly, yours too. You don't need that big house anymore, and sitting on that much cash in investments when you could be helping your daughter launch a successful business? It just doesn't make sense, Mom. My laughter faded, replaced by something colder, something that settled into my chest like ice forming on a winter lake. How did you manage this exactly? The transfers, the house sale? The power of attorney you signed last year. Remember when you had that kidney stone surgery and they had to keep you overnight? I brought the paperwork to the hospital. You signed it. I made sure to bring your reading glasses so you could see everything clearly. Her voice took on a defensive edge. It was all legal, Mom. I didn't do anything wrong. The surgery. I remembered it vaguely. The pain had been excruciating, and they'd given me heavy medication for it. I'd been in and out of consciousness that whole day, signing forms I barely understood, while nurses rotated through my room every hour. Jessica had been there, my helpful daughter, managing all the paperwork while I floated in a morphine haze. I see. And the power of attorney gave you authority to liquidate my entire investment portfolio and sell my house? It gave me authority to manage your financial affairs. You're almost 60, Mom. At a certain point, adult children need to step in and help with these things. I was doing you a favor. A favor. I repeated the word slowly, tasting its bitter irony. You stole nearly $800,000 from me, tried to make me homeless, and you're calling it a favor. I didn't steal anything. God, why are you being so dramatic? The money's still in the family. We'll pay you back once the startup takes off. Probably within 2 years, Brandon says. And you're not going to be homeless. You have your pension and Social Security. You can get a nice one-bedroom apartment. Maybe one of those senior living places with activities and... Senior living? My voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I'm 59, Jessica. Well, you're not getting any younger. And honestly, Mom, this works out better for everyone. Brandon and I need this capital. You need to downsize. Everything you own will come to me eventually anyway when you know. So really, we're just accessing the inheritance a little early. Think of it as an advance. The casual way she discussed my eventual death, the entitlement dripping from every word, the complete absence of remorse or even acknowledgement that she'd done something wrong. It was like talking to a stranger wearing my daughter's face. How much does Brandon know about this? I asked quietly. He knows everything. It was actually his idea. He pointed out that you had all these assets just sitting there while we're struggling to get our business off the ground. He said that in a healthy family, resources get shared across generations. His parents helped him buy his first condo when he was 25. By stealing from them? It's not stealing. Why do you keep saying that? Jessica's voice rose, taking on a whining quality I recognized from her teenage years. You're being completely unreasonable about this. I called to tell you about the wedding and our exciting new venture, and you're acting like I've committed some kind of crime. Jessica, I kept my voice level. You forged authorization to liquidate my retirement savings. You fraudulently sold a property that you had no legal right to sell. Yes, sweetheart, those are crimes. Multiple felonies, actually. Oh my God, you're not going to pull the lawyer card, are you? Just because you worked in legal offices for 20 years doesn't mean you know everything about the law. The power of attorney is valid. I checked with Brandon's attorney. Everything I did was completely legal. We'll see about that. Tell me, which property did you sell? What's the address? What? I don't know. Your house, the one you live in. The address, Jessica. What address is on the sales contract? Hold on. I heard rustling papers. 1427 Oak Street, Denver. I closed my eyes, and despite everything, I almost smiled. I see. What's that supposed to mean? It means, my dear daughter, that you just fraudulently sold a rental property that currently has tenants living in it. The Mitchell family. Lovely people, by the way. They've been renting from me for 3 years. They have 16 months remaining on their lease. Silence. You still there, Jessica? That's impossible. Oak Street is your address. Oak Street is the address of a rental property I inherited from your grandmother 7 years ago. It's a nice little 3-bedroom house that I've kept as an investment property. I collect rent on it monthly. The Mitchells have a legally binding lease that doesn't expire until February of next year. But that's the only property in your name. I checked the county records. You checked the county records for properties titled in my personal name. You didn't check for properties held in trust. I opened my laptop as we spoke, pulling up my files. The house I actually live in, the one you grew up in, Jessica, is titled under the Catherine R. Wells Revocable Living Trust. Your grandmother helped me set it up when your father and I were having financial difficulties years ago. Asset protection. The trust owns the house, not me personally. More silence, longer this time. So the buyers of the Oak Street property are going to show up expecting an empty house, and they're going to find the Mitchell family living there with more than a year left on their lease. A lease you never disclosed to them. That's fraud, Jessica. Real, prosecutable fraud. The buyers will sue you. The title company will investigate. And when they discover you forged the authorization to sell that property, well, I let the sentence hang. I didn't forge anything. You signed the power of attorney. Did I? Did I really? Or did you bring papers to a hospital room where I was heavily medicated, possibly have me sign blank forms, and then have them notarized later? Because that's what it sounds like to me. This is insane. You're acting insane, Mom. I'm trying to build a future with the man I love, and you're threatening your own daughter with legal action? I'm not threatening you, Jessica. I'm explaining to you what's going to happen when the buyers of that property discover they've been defrauded. They'll come after you, not me. The title company will investigate the power of attorney, and when they find irregularities, which I'm certain they will, law enforcement will get involved. You wouldn't do that to me. You're my mother. You're right. I'm your mother. I'm the woman who raised you alone while your father lived overseas. I worked 2 jobs to put you through college so you'd graduate debt-free. I was there for every heartbreak, every achievement, every moment you needed me. And you just stole my life savings and tried to make me homeless without a second thought. So you tell me, Jessica, who's the one failing at being family here? If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. Her breathing quickened on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed, harder. Fine. You want to play it this way? Brandon and I have lawyers too. We'll fight you on this. We'll prove you gave me permission. We'll show that you're getting older and confused about what you signed and when. We'll demonstrate that you need help managing your affairs and that I was acting in your best interest. Go ahead and try. I have documentation of everything. The original trust documents, my rental agreement with the Mitchells, bank statements showing I was actively managing my accounts, right up until you emptied them. But you go ahead and paint me as a confused old woman. Let's see how that plays in court. You're really going to do this? You're really going to destroy your own daughter over money? I'm going to protect myself from someone who stole from me. The fact that the thief happens to be my daughter makes it more painful, not less serious. I hate you. Her voice cracked. I hate you, and I hope you die alone in whatever tiny apartment you end up in. And I hope you realize too late that you destroyed the only family you had left over your precious pride. She hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, feeling the weight of what had just happened settle over me like a heavy blanket. My daughter, my baby girl, the child I'd carried and birthed and raised with everything I had just stolen from me and then cursed me when I wouldn't let her get away with it. But underneath the pain, underneath the shock and betrayal, something else was crystallizing. Cold, clear, determined. Jessica had made a catastrophic mistake. She'd assumed I was weak, confused, easily manipulated because of my age. She'd underestimated me completely. And now she was about to learn exactly how serious those mistakes were. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out my file folder labeled Properties and Investments. Inside were copies of every important document: the trust paperwork for my actual home, the deed to the Oak Street rental property, the lease agreement with the Mitchell family, my investment account statements, everything. Then I picked up my phone and called Margaret Shapiro, an attorney I'd known for 2 decades through professional circles. We'd served on a community board together, attended the same networking events, shared more than a few conversations about the challenges women faced in male-dominated professions. "Margaret, it's Catherine Wells. I need your help with something serious. My daughter has committed fraud, and I need to know my legal options." "Catherine, come to my office. Don't say anything else over the phone. Come now." I gathered my documents, grabbed my purse, and headed out. As I drove across town to Margaret's office, I kept replaying the conversation with Jessica in my mind. The casual entitlement in her voice. The way she'd spoken about my eventual death as if it were just a minor inconvenience delaying her inheritance. The complete absence of remorse or even acknowledgement that she'd violated my trust in the most fundamental way possible. When had my daughter become this person? Had she always been capable of this, and I'd simply refused to see it? Or had Brandon influenced her, corrupted her values, turned her into someone who could betray her own mother without a second thought? Margaret's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, full of dark wood and leather furniture that spoke of old money and established success. Her paralegal, an efficient woman named Sandra, showed me to a conference room immediately. Margaret arrived moments later, carrying a legal pad and wearing her professional armor, a sharp gray suit, minimal jewelry, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She sat across from me and folded her hands. "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning." I did. I walked her through the entire phone call, explained about the power of attorney signed during my surgery, detailed the liquidation of my investment accounts and the fraudulent sale of the rental property. I showed her my documentation, the trust papers, the lease agreement, the bank statements. Margaret took notes in silence, her expression growing more grave with each detail. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. "Catherine, this is serious. Your daughter has committed multiple felonies: grand theft, fraud, forgery if the power of attorney was falsified, and potentially elderly financial abuse given your age." I'm not elderly. I'm 59. Legally, in Colorado, financial exploitation of anyone over 55 can be prosecuted under elder abuse statutes. The penalties are severe. She tapped her pen against her notepad. "Let me be clear about what's ahead if you pursue this. Your daughter could face 5 to 10 years in prison. Her life, her career, her marriage, her future would be destroyed. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Jessica as a little girl, coming home from first grade with a drawing she'd made of our family, stick figures holding hands under a crayon sun. I thought about teaching her to ride a bike, about staying up all night when she had the flu, about the pride I'd felt watching her walk across the stage at college graduation. Then I thought about her voice on the phone an hour ago. "You're almost 60, Mom. Everything you own will come to me eventually anyway. We're just accessing the inheritance a little early." My daughter stole nearly $800,000 from me and tried to make me homeless, I said quietly. She felt entitled to do it because I'm her mother, and she assumed I'd either not notice or not care enough to stop her. What kind of lesson am I teaching her if I let this slide? Margaret nodded slowly. "Then here's what we do. First, we file a fraud report with your bank to freeze any further transactions. Second, we contact the title company handling the property sale. They need to know immediately that the sale was fraudulent. Third, we file a police report. You can request that they investigate before pressing charges, which gives you some control over the timing. What about the buyers of the property? They'll likely sue Jessica for fraud once they discover the tenants. They may also sue the title company for failing to catch this. Either way, Jessica will be liable for the full purchase price, plus damages and legal fees. And the Mitchells? Their lease is valid. They're protected. But we should contact them immediately to let them know what's happening. They deserve to know their housing situation has been compromised through no fault of their own. We spent the next 3 hours preparing documents. Margaret's paralegal filed fraud claims with my bank and initiated contact with the title company. By the time I left Margaret's office, the wheels of justice were in motion. My phone had been buzzing constantly, calls and texts from Jessica, all of which I ignored. Finally, as I sat in my car in Margaret's parking lot, I looked at the messages. The first few were angry. "You're destroying your own daughter. I can't believe you're doing this. Brandon says you're insane and vindictive." Then they shifted to desperate. "Mom, please call me. We need to talk about this. I'm sorry if I upset you." And finally to threatening. "Brandon's lawyer says what you're doing is harassment. We'll sue you for emotional distress. You're going to regret this." I deleted them all and blocked her number. If Jessica wanted to communicate with me, she could do it through attorneys. When I got home, I made myself dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta with vegetables, and tried to process everything that had happened. My quiet, orderly life had exploded in the space of a single phone call. My daughter was a thief. I was about to prosecute my own child. Everything felt surreal, like I'd stumbled into someone else's life. My phone rang. Thomas, my younger child. I'd been dreading this call. "Mom, what the hell is going on? Jessica just called me crying, saying you're trying to have her arrested." I sighed. "Tom, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, and I need you to listen without interrupting, okay?" I walked him through everything. The stolen money, the fraudulent property sale, Jessica's complete lack of remorse. Thomas listened in silence, and when I finished, he let out a long, slow breath. "Jesus, Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Jessica was capable of something like this." "Neither did I." "What are you going to do?" "I've already done it. Filed fraud reports with the bank. Contacted the title company. Started working with an attorney. The police will be involved soon." "So you're really going to press charges against your own daughter?" The question stung, even though I'd expected it. "Tom, she stole $800,000 from me. She tried to make me homeless. She showed absolutely no remorse. In fact, she felt entitled to do it because I'm her mother. What should I do? Just let her rob me and pretend it's okay because we're family?" No, you're right. I'm sorry. It's a lot to process." He paused. "For what it's worth, Mom, I think you're doing the right thing. Jessica needs to face consequences. She's been getting away with irresponsible behavior for years because you and Dad always bailed her out. Maybe this is what she needs to finally grow up." We talked for another hour. Thomas told me about his life in Seattle, his work as a high school history teacher, the house he'd just bought with his wife Emma. Normal things, comforting things, reminders that not all of my children had betrayed me. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at my kitchen window, looking out at the garden I'd cultivated for 15 years. The roses were past their peak now, autumn settling in, but they were still beautiful. I'd planted most of them myself, had tended them through droughts and harsh winters, had watched them grow from bare root sticks into magnificent bushes. This house, this garden, this life, I'd built it all carefully, patiently, with my own hands and my own labor. And Jessica had tried to take it away, with a few forged signatures and some entitled justifications. Not anymore. The next morning, I contacted the Mitchells. Sarah Mitchell answered, her voice bright and cheerful. "Mrs. Wells, what a lovely surprise. How are you?" "Sarah, I need to tell you something, and I'm afraid it's not pleasant news." I explained the situation as gently as I could, that my daughter had fraudulently sold the house they were renting, that buyers might try to contact them, that their lease was absolutely valid and protected. There was a long silence. "Your daughter sold our house? The house we're living in? Without telling us or you?" "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm working with my attorney to fix this, but I wanted you to hear it from me first." "Mrs. Wells, I don't even know what to say. We have 2 young kids. This is their home. They go to school here, have friends in the neighborhood. The thought of some buyer showing up and trying to kick us out? That won't happen. Your lease is valid and enforceable. I promise you, I'm going to protect your family in this." "What about your daughter? What's going to happen to her?" "She's going to face the legal consequences of committing fraud." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry you're going through this. Having your own child betray you, I can't imagine how much that hurts." After we hung up, I sat in my living room and let myself cry. Not gentle tears, gut-wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. I cried for the daughter I thought I'd raised, for the relationship that was now destroyed, for the innocence of believing your children would always love you more than they loved money. When the tears finally stopped, I felt hollow, but also strangely calm. I'd made my choice. Now I had to see it through. 3 days later, Kyle from the title company called. His voice was shaky, nervous. "Mrs. Wells, we've completed our investigation into the power of attorney document your daughter submitted. There are significant problems." "I'm listening." "The notary seal on the document belongs to a notary public named Rebecca Chen, whose license was valid at the time. However, we contacted Miss Chen directly, and she has no record of notarizing any document for you or your daughter. Furthermore, Miss Chen was attending her sister's wedding in Orlando, Florida, on the date this document claims to have been notarized. She has airline tickets, hotel receipts, and wedding photos proving she was out of state that entire week. So the notarization was completely fabricated." "Yes, ma'am. This is forgery. We're legally required to report this to law enforcement. We're also halting the property sale immediately and notifying the buyers. They're not happy." "I imagine not. Mrs. Wells, I want you to know that our company takes fraud very seriously. We should have caught this before it got this far. We'll be conducting internal reviews of our procedures, but I'm afraid your daughter is going to face serious legal consequences." And, after hanging up with Kyle, I called Margaret. "The title company confirmed the forgery," I told her. "They're reporting it to police." "Then it's out of your hands now. The state will prosecute whether you want them to or not. Catherine, you should prepare yourself for what's coming. This is going to get ugly." She was right. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mrs. Wells, this is Brandon Mitchell." His voice was smooth, confident, with an undertone of condescension. "I think we need to talk about this misunderstanding before it gets out of hand." "There's no misunderstanding. Your fiancé committed fraud. Jessica was trying to help you. She saw that you were struggling to manage your complex financial situation, and she stepped in as a loving daughter should. Now you're embarrassed and lashing out, and I get that. But Mrs. Wells, you need to think about what you're doing. You're about to destroy your daughter's life over what amounts to a family disagreement about money management." "A family disagreement?" I kept my voice level. "She stole $800,000 from me. She forged documents. She tried to make me homeless. Those aren't disagreements, Mr. Mitchell. Those are crimes. With all due respect, Mrs. Wells, you're not thinking clearly about this. Jessica told me about your age, about some of the memory issues you've been having. I don't have memory issues. And I think what's really happening here is that you're frightened about getting older, about losing control, and you're projecting that fear onto Jessica. It's actually quite common in women your age." My mother went through something similar in her early 60s. Its condescension in his voice made my teeth clench. "Let me be very clear, Mr. Mitchell. I'm 59 years old. I run a successful accounting firm. I manage complex financial portfolios for multiple clients. My mind is sharp. My memory is excellent, and I know exactly what your fiancée did. She stole from me, period. It's strongly emphasized in the written words, pausing to encouraging ideas. We're willing to work something out. Jessica is prepared to return some of the money over time. Maybe we can set up a payment plan, something reasonable. And about the house, we can probably cancel that sale, pay a small cancellation fee to the buyers. Everyone makes mistakes, Mrs. Wells. The question is whether you're going to be reasonable about fixing this or whether you're going to be vindictive. How much of the money would she return? Well, we've already invested a significant portion in the startup, so we can't return it all immediately. But we could probably manage, say, $50,000 over the next 2 years? $50,000 out of $340,000. It's a starting point. We can negotiate. The point is, we're willing to make this right. But you have to drop all this talk about fraud and forgery and police reports. That's not productive. What's not productive is your fiancé committing multiple felonies. His voice hardened. You're making a mistake, Mrs. Wells. Jessica has a bright future ahead of her. My startup is going to be worth millions. If you pursue this vendetta, you're cutting yourself off from that success. Think about your grandchildren. Don't you want them to grow up with financial security? Don't you want to be part of that future? Grandchildren? Jessica isn't even pregnant. Not yet, but we're planning to start a family right away. Don't you want to be a grandmother? Don't you want to watch your grandchildren grow up? 'Cause if you go through with prosecuting Jessica, if you send her to prison, you'll never have that relationship. You'll die alone, estranged from your only daughter and her family, and it'll be your own fault. The manipulation was so blatant, it almost made me laugh. Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to give you some free advice. You're engaged to a woman who just committed serious crimes. The police are investigating. The title company has evidence of forgery. The buyers of that property are preparing to sue. Your startup funds came from stolen money, which means they're potentially subject to seizure as proceeds of crime. If I were you, I'd be talking to a lawyer about how to protect yourself, not calling me to issue threats disguised as negotiations. This isn't over. I hung up. Within an hour, my phone exploded with messages, not from Jessica or Brandon, but from people I barely knew. Jessica's friends, former colleagues, distant relatives. They'd apparently been told some version of events that painted me as a vindictive mother attacking her innocent daughter. How can you do this to Jessica? She was only trying to help you. You should be ashamed of yourself. Family is supposed to support each other. I blocked them all. Let them think what they wanted. I knew the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through everything. Was I doing the right thing? Was I being vindictive? Was there a part of me that was motivated by hurt pride rather than justice? But every time I wavered, I thought about Jessica's voice on that phone call, the casual entitlement, the complete lack of remorse, the way she talked about my eventual death as just a timing inconvenience for accessing her inheritance. If I forgave her now, if I let this slide, what was I teaching her? That she could steal, forge, lie, and face no consequences as long as she manipulated the right emotions? That being family meant having unlimited access to everything I owned? No, Jessica needed to learn that actions had consequences, especially when those actions hurt someone who loved her. I got up and made myself tea. As I sat at my kitchen table in the pre-dawn darkness, I thought about my own mother, who'd passed away 8 years ago. She'd been a strong woman, a school teacher who'd raised 4 children mostly on her own after my father left. I remembered her telling me once, near the end of her life, "Catherine, the hardest part of being a mother is knowing when to step back and let your children face their own consequences. You can't save them from everything. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let them fall." I hadn't fully understood what she meant then. I understood now. The next morning, I had a meeting scheduled with Detective Maria Rodriguez from the Fraud Division. Margaret accompanied me to the police station. Detective Rodriguez was in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a direct manner that put me immediately at ease. She led us to an interview room and pulled out a digital recorder. "Mrs. Wells, I want to record your statement if that's all right with you. This will be used in the investigation and potentially in court proceedings." I nodded. For the next 2 hours, I walked through everything: the phone call, the stolen money, the forged power of attorney, the fraudulent property sale. Detective Rodriguez asked detailed questions, taking careful notes, occasionally asking me to clarify dates or amounts. When I finished, she sat back and studied me for a moment. "Mrs. Wells, I've been investigating financial fraud for 15 years. I see cases like this more often than you'd think. Family members exploiting elderly relatives. But most victims don't report it. They're too embarrassed, too worried about family drama, too concerned about what people will think. The fact that you're here, that you're willing to prosecute your own daughter, that takes real courage." "It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like heartbreak." "Those two things aren't mutually exclusive." She tapped her pen against her notepad. "Here's what happens next. We'll complete our investigation, talk to the bank, the title company, the notary, the buyers of the property. We'll build a case and present it to the district attorney's office. Based on what you've told me and the evidence I've seen so far, I'm confident they'll file charges." "Multiple felonies. How long will this take?" "Investigations like this typically take 4 to 6 weeks. Then the DA will decide on charges. Your daughter will be arrested, arraigned, and the case will proceed. If she's smart, she'll take a plea deal. If not, it goes to trial. Either way, Mrs. Wells, this is going to be a long, difficult process. Are you prepared for that?" Was I? I thought about the months ahead. The media attention, the family drama, the whispers and judgments. I thought about Jessica's face when she was arrested. About her friends blaming me. About the inevitable moment when I'd have to testify against my own daughter in court. "I'm prepared," I said. After leaving the police station, Margaret and I stopped for coffee. She studied me across the table, her expression concerned. "Catherine, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Why are you really doing this? And I don't mean the surface reasons, the theft, the fraud. I mean at a deeper level. What's driving you?" I considered the question carefully. When Jessica was 5 years old, she broke my favorite vase, a crystal piece that had been my grandmother's. She was playing with a ball in the house, which she knew she wasn't supposed to do, and she knocked it off the mantel. When I found it shattered on the floor, she looked at me with these big, innocent eyes and said, "The cat did it." We didn't have a cat. Margaret smiled slightly. I made her confess, made her tell the truth. Then I made her use her allowance to buy me flowers every week for a month as a way of making amends. She was only 5, but I wanted her to understand that lying made things worse, not better. That mistakes could be fixed if you took responsibility for them. But she didn't learn that lesson. No, or maybe I stopped teaching it. As she got older, whenever she messed up, I'd swoop in and fix things. Bad grades? I'd hire a tutor. Credit card debt in college? I'd pay it off. Boyfriend problems? I'd listen for hours and tell her everything would be okay. I stared into my coffee. I loved her so much that I shielded her from consequences. And now she's 32 years old, and she thinks she can steal $800,000 from her mother without any repercussions. So this is about teaching her a lesson. This is about teaching her that actions have consequences before she destroys someone else's life. Because next time, it might not be me. It might be Brandon or a business partner, or someday her own children. If I let this slide, I'm telling her that fraud is acceptable as long as you can justify it to yourself. I'm enabling her to become someone even more dangerous. Margaret reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're a good mother, Catherine, even though right now it probably doesn't feel that way." The investigation proceeded quickly. Detective Rodriguez called me a week later with an update. We've confirmed everything. Bank has documentation of the unauthorized transfers. The title company has proof the notarization was forged. The notary public has submitted a sworn statement that she never notarized those documents. The buyers of the property have provided their contract and are pursuing their own lawsuit, and we found something else. What? Your daughter attempted to transfer funds from your retirement accounts to your 401k and IRA. The financial institution flagged it as suspicious and froze the transaction pending verification. When they couldn't reach you for confirmation, they denied the transfer. If they hadn't, she would have taken another $200,000. My stomach dropped. Jessica had tried to steal even more than I'd realized. The theft wasn't limited to what she'd successfully taken. She'd gone after everything I had. Wells, the DA wants to meet with you. Are you available tomorrow afternoon? I was. The district attorney's office was in the county courthouse, a big, imposing granite building downtown. Margaret and I met with Diane Torres, a prosecutor who specialized in financial crimes. Diane was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with an intensity that reminded me of myself at that age. She laid out several folders on her desk and opened the first one. Mrs. Wells, based on Detective Rodriguez's investigation, we're prepared to file charges against your daughter. Multiple charges, actually. Theft, Class 3 felony because the amount exceeds $100,000. Forgery, Class 5 felony. Criminal impersonation, Class 6 felony. And exploitation of an at-risk adult, Class 3 felony. I'm not at risk. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Legally, in Colorado, anyone over 55 can be considered at risk for purposes of financial exploitation statutes. It doesn't mean you're incompetent. It's just a recognition that older adults are frequent targets of financial abuse. She flipped through the pages. If convicted on all counts, your daughter is looking at 8 to 16 years in prison. The number hit me like a physical blow. 16 years. Jessica would be 48 years old when she got out. Her entire youth gone. Mrs. Wells? Diane's voice was gentle. I need you to understand what you're getting into. Prosecuting a family member is one of the most difficult things anyone can do. The defendant will claim you're vindictive, confused, mentally unstable. Their attorney will try to paint you as the villain. Your daughter's friends and supporters will harass you. The media might pick up the story. And through all of it, you'll have to hold firm, knowing you're the reason your daughter is going to prison. But she committed crimes. Yes, she did. Serious crimes. And she needs to be held accountable. I'm not trying to talk you out of this. I'm trying to make sure you're prepared for how hard it's going to be. I looked at Margaret, who nodded encouragingly. Then I turned back to Diane. I'm prepared. File the charges. All right. We'll move forward with the arrest warrant. It'll be executed within the next few days. Mrs. Wells, once this starts, there's no going back. Are you absolutely certain? I thought about Jessica as a little girl, about the dandelions she'd picked for me, about reading bedtime stories and kissing scraped knees and celebrating every achievement. Then I thought about her voice on the phone. Everything you own will come to me eventually anyway. I'm certain. The arrest happened 3 days later. I knew about it only because Thomas called me, his voice tense. Mom, Jessica was just arrested. At her office, in front of her colleagues. She called me from the police station, crying, begging me to talk to you. She says she's sorry, that she'll do anything to fix this, that she just needs you to drop the charges. My hands were shaking. I can't drop the charges, Tom. It's out of my hands now. The state is prosecuting. She says you can tell them you don't want to press charges, that you were mistaken about everything. Was I mistaken? Did she not steal my money? Did she not forge documents? Silence. Then, no, she did all of that. Then I can't lie to protect her. I won't lie to protect her. Mom, she's talking about suicide. She says her life is over, that she can't face prison, that you've destroyed everything she worked for." The words sent ice through my veins. "Tom, is she saying these things to you, or did someone there hear her say them?" "She said it to me on the phone." "Then it's manipulation. If she were genuinely suicidal, she'd be saying it to the officers, to the medical staff. She's saying it to you because she knows you'll tell me, and she hopes it'll make me back down." I took a breath. "But just to be safe, tell her attorney to request a mental health evaluation. If she's genuinely at risk, she needs help. But that doesn't change what she did." "Jesus, Mom, how are you so calm about this?" "I'm not calm. I'm devastated. But I'm also clear about what needs to happen here." Jessica made bail within hours. Brandon put up his condo as collateral. The arraignment was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, my life became a circus. The local news picked up the story. Local woman prosecutes daughter for stealing life savings. Reporters called constantly. Some portrayed me as a hero standing up against elder fraud. Others painted me as a vindictive mother destroying her daughter over a family disagreement. I stopped reading the comments online. They ranged from supportive to viciously critical, and none of them knew the whole truth. Jessica's friends started a social media campaign, Justice for Jessica. They claimed I was a manipulative, abusive mother who'd always been jealous of Jessica's success. They said I was senile and confused, that I'd given Jessica permission for everything and was now having regrets. Some even started a GoFundMe to help with her legal fees. It raised $43,000 in 3 days. I sat in my living room, scrolling through the posts and comments, feeling sick. These people didn't know me. They didn't know what Jessica had done. But they decided I was the villain based on carefully curated information from Jessica and her supporters. Patricia, my friend from book club, came over with wine and sympathy. "Maggie, you can't torture yourself reading that garbage. People believe what they want to believe, especially when the truth is complicated. They think I'm a monster." "Let them think it. You know the truth." That's what matters. But it did matter. I couldn't pretend it didn't hurt to see people I'd known for years suddenly questioning my sanity and my motives. The preliminary hearing was brief but brutal. Jessica appeared with her attorney, Patricia Manning, a sharp-dressed woman with a reputation for aggressive defense tactics. Jessica looked terrible, thin, pale, her expensive clothes hanging loosely on her frame. When our eyes met across the courtroom, she started crying, big, dramatic sobs that echoed through the room. I looked away. The judge reviewed the evidence, bank records showing the unauthorized transfers, testimony from the title company about the forged documents, statements from the notary public, the attempted theft from my retirement accounts. It was overwhelming, damning, and completely factual. Patricia Manning argued that I was a confused, elderly woman who'd actually given Jessica permission for everything and was now suffering from memory problems. She painted Jessica as a devoted daughter trying to help her aging mother, only to be betrayed by my vindictive prosecution. Diane Torres calmly presented contradictory evidence, my testimony, my documentation, the forensic analysis of the forged notarization, the fact that I ran a successful business and showed no signs of confusion or memory issues. The judge, a stern woman named Margaret Hendris, wasn't buying the defense's story. "Miss Manning, your client forged documents, stole a substantial sum from her mother, and attempted to fraudulently sell property she didn't own. These are serious crimes with clear evidence. The defendant is bound over for trial. Bail will continue under the current conditions: house arrest with electronic monitoring, no contact with the victim, surrender of passport." Jessica's legs buckled. Her attorney caught her arm. As they led her from the courtroom, Jessica turned back to look at me one more time. Her expression was pleading, desperate. I remained seated, my face carefully neutral. Inside, I felt like I was being torn apart. That night, I sat alone in my house and allowed myself to cry. deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place of pure grief. I cried for the daughter I'd lost, for the relationship that would never be repaired, for the innocence of believing that love and sacrifice would be enough to raise a good person. When the tears finally stopped, I felt empty, but also strangely resolved. I'd made my choice. Now I had to live with it. The trial was scheduled for 3 months later. In the meantime, life continued in a surreal half-state. I went to work, managing my clients' accounts and handling their tax preparations. I attended book club, though conversations were stilted and uncomfortable. Everyone knew about the case, but no one knew what to say. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Rachel Kim, specialized in family trauma, and our sessions became a lifeline. She helped me process the guilt, the grief, the constant second-guessing. "You're not responsible for your daughter's choices," she told me repeatedly. "You can only control your own actions and reactions. Jessica chose to steal from you. You chose not to enable that behavior. Both are valid choices, but only one of them is yours." Through therapy, I began to understand something important. I'd spent Jessica's entire life trying to be the perfect mother, trying to make up for Richard's absence, trying to give her everything I'd never had. In doing so, I'd failed to teach her the most important lesson, that she wasn't entitled to anything just because she wanted it. Page 6 weeks before the trial, Patricia Manning called Margaret with a plea offer. "My client is willing to plead guilty to attempted theft, a Class 5 felony, in exchange for 5 years supervised probation, 500 hours of community service, and restitution of $340,000 paid over 15 years. Margaret relayed the offer to me. "It's actually a decent deal, Catherine. Jessica would avoid prison time, but she'd have a felony conviction and would be making payments to you for the next decade and a half. The DA is willing to consider it if you agree." Catherine, the sting is tempting you to appeal this offer. No trial, no media circus, no having to testify against your daughter in court. She stole $800,000 from me, Margaret. Well, she tried to. She succeeded in taking $340,000 and only failed to get the rest because the financial institutions caught it. She forged documents. She tried to make me homeless. And her plea offer doesn't even include jail time? No. If she'd stolen this much from a stranger, she'd be facing prison. Why should she get a lighter sentence because her victim loved her? Margaret nodded. "I'll tell Diane to reject the offer. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you." 2 weeks later, Patricia came back with a better offer. Guilty plea to theft and forgery. Recommendation for 4 years in prison with eligibility for parole after 2 years. Full restitution plus interest. Again, I said no. "Why?" Margaret asked, though she knew the answer. "Because she needs to face the full consequences of what she did. Every charge, every penalty. If I agree to a reduced sentence, I'm still enabling her. I'm still saying that being my daughter means she gets special treatment." The trial began on a cold Monday in November. The courthouse was packed. Media, curious onlookers, Jessica's supporters, and a few of my friends there to support me. I sat behind the prosecution table, my hands folded in my lap, trying to look calm even though my heart was racing. Jessica sat with her attorney at the defense table, refusing to look at me. The jury selection took 2 days. Diane wanted jurors who understood financial abuse and would sympathize with an older victim. Patricia wanted jurors who would be skeptical of a mother prosecuting her own daughter. In the end, we got a mixed group, 7 women, 5 men, ranging in age from late 20s to early 70s. Several had elderly parents. 1 was an accountant. 3 had adult children. Opening statements began on Wednesday. Diane stood before the jury, her voice clear and strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, This is a case about betrayal. Catherine Wells raised her daughter alone, worked multiple jobs to put her through college, sacrificed everything to give her the best possible start in life. And how did Jessica Wells repay her mother's love and sacrifice? By stealing her life savings, forging legal documents, and attempting to make her homeless. This isn't a family disagreement. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a calculated series of crimes committed by a daughter who saw her aging mother as nothing more than a source of funding for her own ambitions. She walked the jury through the evidence methodically, the bank records, the forged power of attorney, the testimony waiting from the notary public, the attempted theft from retirement accounts. Then, Patricia stood for the defense's opening statement. Catherine Wells is 59 years old. She lives alone. She's approaching retirement age. And like many people that age, she's frightened. Frightened of aging, of losing control, of becoming dependent on others. When her loving daughter Jessica tried to help her manage her complex financial affairs, Catherine became confused, became convinced that Jessica was stealing from her rather than helping her. This isn't a case about theft. It's a case about a mother's fear and confusion, and a daughter who's now paying the price for trying to be helpful. It was masterful manipulation, and I could see some jurors nodding along. The prosecution's case took 3 days. Diane called witness after witness, each one adding another piece to the puzzle. The bank representative testified about the unauthorized transfers, about the fraud alert that had stopped the retirement account theft, about my immediate call reporting the theft when I discovered it. The title company representative explained the forged power of attorney, the fraudulent property sale, the discovery that tenants were living in the house Jessica had sold. The notary public, Rebecca Chen, testified that she'd never notarized any documents for me or Jessica, that she'd been in Florida on the date the documents claimed to be notarized, and that someone had stolen her seal information to create the forgery. The Mitchells testified about their valid lease, about the shock of discovering their house had been sold out from under them, about the fear of potentially losing their home. Tough. Then I took the stand, gently but firmly. I explained my relationship with Jessica, the years of raising her alone, the pride I'd felt in her accomplishments. Then the phone call, the discovery of the theft, the revelation about the forged documents. Mrs. Wells, did you give your daughter permission to withdraw $340,000 from your investment accounts? And you responded, no. Did you give her permission to sell your rental property? No. Did you knowingly sign a power of attorney, giving her authority to manage your finances? Not knowingly. No. I was heavily medicated after surgery. I don't remember signing any such document, and if I did, I didn't understand what it was. Are you confused about your finances, Mrs. Wells? No, I'm an accountant. I manage finances for a living. I track my accounts carefully and always have. Do you suffer from memory problems? No. Have you been diagnosed with any cognitive impairments? None whatsoever. Patricia's cross-examination was aggressive. She tried to paint me as bitter about Jessica's engagement, jealous of her success, vindictive about being left alone as I aged. Mrs. Wells, isn't it true that you've always been controlling about money? I've always been careful about money. There's a difference. You work 2 jobs while raising your children. Isn't that right? Yes. And you often told them about those sacrifices, didn't you? Made them feel guilty about what you'd given up for them? I never made them feel guilty. I simply wanted them to understand the value of hard work and education. But you did tell them about your sacrifices. When relevant, yes. So they grew up knowing that you'd given up your dreams for them, that you'd sacrificed your youth for them, that they owed you for everything you'd done. Objection, Diane said, argumentative. Sustained. But the damage was done. Patricia had planted the seed that I was a martyr mother who'd raised children drowning in guilt, And now I was using that guilt to manipulate Jessica. She continued, Mrs. Wells, when Jessica told you about her engagement, you weren't happy, were you? I was happy for her. But you didn't like Brandon. I'd only met him a few times. I didn't know him well enough to form a strong opinion. You thought he was using your daughter for her money, didn't you? I never said that, but you thought it. And when Jessica needed financial help for Brandon's startup, you refused, didn't you? She never asked. She just took. Because she knew you'd say no. Because you've always been controlling about money, and she knew you'd never voluntarily help her build a life separate from you. That's not true, isn't it? Your daughter's getting married, starting a business, building a future, and you're trying to send her to prison. That sounds like control to me, Mrs. Wells. I forced myself to stay calm. My daughter stole from me. I'm not trying to control her. I'm trying to hold her accountable. The cross-examination went on for 2 more hours. By the time I left the stand, I felt wrung out, exhausted, and uncertain about how the jury perceived me. That night, Margaret came to my house with takeout and wine. You did great today, she said, though her expression was concerned. Patricia made me sound like a controlling nightmare. She's doing her job, but the evidence speaks for itself. Catherine, the jury has bank records, forged documents, testimony from multiple witnesses. Patricia can try to paint you as vindictive all she wants, but she can't explain away the facts. The defense's case began the next day. Patricia called character witnesses, Jessica's friends, former colleagues, people who testified about what a kind, caring person she was, how she volunteered at animal shelters, how she organized charity fundraisers, how she'd always talked lovingly about her mother. Then Brandon took the stand. He described Jessica as thoughtful and devoted, concerned about my welfare, worried about my ability to manage my finances as I aged. He claimed Jessica had shown him the power of attorney I'd willingly signed, that she'd been in tears about having to step in and help me. She loved her mother so much, Brandon said, his voice heavy with emotion. She was terrified of seeing Catherine struggle. She just wanted to help, and now she's being punished for caring. Under cross-examination, Diane destroyed him. Mr. Mitchell, you benefited financially from the money Jessica stole, didn't you? I wouldn't call it stolen. Answer the question. Did you benefit financially? Pause. Yes. The money was invested in our startup. Yes. A startup that hasn't produced any revenue yet, correct? We're still in development, and the money for your wedding, where did that come from? Square. Jessica and I both contributed. And didn't Jessica's contribution come from her mother's accounts? Brandon shifted uncomfortably. I don't know the specific source of. You don't know? For how you didn't ask your fiancé where she suddenly got hundreds of thousands of dollars? I assumed it was family money she had access to. Family money she had access to by stealing it, and you benefited from that theft, didn't you, Mr. Mitchell? I didn't know it was theft. But now you do. And you're still defending Jessica, still planning to marry her, still hoping to benefit from that stolen money. Isn't that right? Brandon's testimony crumbled from there. By the time Diane finished with him, the jury was looking at him with open skepticism. Then Jessica took the stand. She was dressed conservatively, a navy blue suit, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back simply. She looked young and vulnerable, and I could see it was a calculated choice. Patricia led her through her testimony carefully. Jessica described her childhood, how much she'd loved me, how she always tried to make me proud. She cried as she talked about watching me work multiple jobs, about feeling guilty for the sacrifices I'd made. When I saw my mom struggling to manage her finances, I just wanted to help, Jessica said, tears streaming down her face. She'd done so much for me. I thought this was my chance to finally do something for her. And the power of attorney? Patricia asked gently. Mom signed it willingly. She was in the hospital, yes, but she was lucid. She told me she wanted me to be able to help her if anything happened. She thanked me for being responsible enough to think ahead. And the money transfers? I told Mom I was investing the money for her. She knew about Brandon's startup. She knew the potential returns could be substantial. She agreed it was a good opportunity. Say it. What about the house sale? Mom had been talking about downsizing for years. She said the house was too big, too much maintenance. When I found a buyer, I thought I was helping her. I was going to surprise her with how much we got for it. And it was all lies, delivered with perfect sincerity. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed her myself. Then Diane stood for cross-examination, and everything changed. Miss Wells, you testified that your mother willingly signed the power of attorney. Do you remember what date that was? January 14th of last year. And where were you when this happened? At County General Hospital. What time of day? Early evening, around 6 o'clock. You're certain about that? Yes. Diane pulled out a document. This is the power of attorney in question. According to the notary seal, it was notarized at 2:30 in the afternoon. But you just testified that your mother signed it at 6 in the evening. Which is it? Jessica paled. I must have misremembered the time. You misremembered by 3.5 hours? That seems like a significant error. I was stressed. Mom was in the hospital. I don't remember every detail. Let's talk about details. The notary on this document is Rebecca Chen. Did you know Miss Chen? Strong. P. What? No, she was at the hospital. Strong. She was at the hospital? Are you saying she was a staff notary? Strong. Yeah, I think so. Strong. You think so? Or you know so? Yeah, I assume she worked there. Strong. P. Ms. Wells, County General Hospital doesn't have a staff notary. Patients who need documents notarized have to arrange for a mobile notary service. Did you arrange for a mobile notary? Strong. P. I don't remember. That. You don't remember? But you clearly remember your mother thanking you for being responsible and agreeing to the investment plan. You remember specific conversations, but you don't remember how you got a notary to the hospital? It was a year ago. I can't remember everything. Diane pulled out another document. This is a sworn statement from Rebecca Chen. She states that she was in Orlando, Florida on January 14th, attending her sister's wedding. She has airline tickets, hotel receipts, and photographs proving her location. So she couldn't have been at County General Hospital in Denver. Can you explain that? Jessica's hands were shaking. Maybe I'm wrong about the date. You're wrong about the date? A moment ago you were certain it was January 14th. I'm confused. This whole thing has been so stressful. Let's clear up the confusion. The truth is, you never had your mother sign a legitimate power of attorney, did you? You took advantage of her illness, possibly got her to sign blank papers while she was medicated, and then you forged the notarization later, using stolen seal information from Miss Chen. Isn't that what really happened? And press next. You would never forge documents from Miss Chen? Then how do you explain the impossibility of the notarization? How do you explain Rebecca Chen being in another state? I don't know. Maybe the notary lied about where she was. You're suggesting that a licensed notary public would lie under oath, would falsify records, would commit perjury, all to frame you? Why would she do that? I don't know. Or maybe the simpler explanation is true, that you forged these documents to steal from your mother. Jessica was crying now, her composure completely shattered. I just wanted to help her. I was trying to do the right thing. By stealing $340,000? It wasn't stealing. She's my mother. She would have wanted me to have it. But she didn't give it to you, did she? You took it without permission. She would have said no. She always says no. She never wants me to have anything, to be successful, to be happy. She'd rather watch me struggle than give me a chance at something better. And there it was, the truth, finally. Jessica hadn't stolen from me because she thought I wanted her to, or because she was trying to help me. She'd stolen from me because she felt entitled to my money, and she was angry that I wouldn't voluntarily hand it over. The courtroom was silent. Even Patricia Manning looked stunned. Diane let the words hang in the air for a long moment before quietly saying, "No further questions." The damage was catastrophic. In her anger and frustration, Jessica had revealed her true motivation. The jury had seen behind the mask. Closing arguments the next day were almost anticlimactic. Diane methodically reviewed the evidence, the unauthorized transfers, the forged documents, the attempted theft from retirement accounts, Jessica's own admission that she'd taken the money because she felt entitled to it. Patricia tried to salvage the situation by returning to the theme of confusion and good intentions, but it rang hollow after Jessica's testimony. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned, their faces were solemn. On the charge of theft in the first degree, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. On the charge of forgery, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. On the charge of criminal impersonation, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. On the charge of exploitation of an at-risk adult, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. Jessica collapsed, her attorney catching her before she fell. Across the courtroom, Brandon put his face in his hands. I sat perfectly still, feeling everything and nothing at once. Guilty. My daughter was guilty, convicted by a jury of her peers of stealing from her own mother. The judge scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Diane gave a brief statement about justice being served. Patricia said they planned to appeal. Jessica was hustled away by her attorney, avoiding all questions. Margaret guided me to her car, shielding me from reporters. "How do you feel?" she asked as we drove away. "I don't know. Empty, relieved, devastated, all of the above? That's normal. You just lived through something incredibly difficult. Give yourself permission to feel whatever you're feeling." That night, Thomas called. "Mom, I watched the verdict on the news. Are you okay?" "And I don't know yet. Ask me in a few months." Jessica called me from Patricia's office. She's not doing well. She's talking about suicide again." "Then she's safe. She definitely shouldn't be back in Brandon's house, so someone watching her at all times." "I know this is hard for you. She's your sister. But she did this to herself." Say, "I know. I wish there was a way to fix this, to make it all go away." Say, "There isn't. We can't go back. We can only move forward." The sentencing hearing was packed. Media filled the gallery, along with Jessica's supporters and a handful of my friends. Say so. Judge Hendricks called for impact statements. Sarah Mitchell spoke about the terror of nearly losing her family's home. The buyers of the property described their financial losses. I spoke about betrayal, about the violation of trust, about hoping Jessica would use her time in prison to become someone capable of genuine remorse. In person, Jessica stood. She'd lost weight during the trial, and her expensive suit hung loosely on her frame. In person, Jessica stood. She'd lost weight during the trial, and her expensive suit hung loosely on her frame. Her voice was shaking, but for the first time she sounded genuine. I spent the trial trying to justify my actions, trying to paint myself as a victim, trying to make everyone believe I was just trying to help. But the truth is, I was entitled. I saw my mother's money as something I deserved, something I had a right to because I was her daughter. I was wrong. She turned to face me. "Mom, I'm sorry. Not because I got caught. Not because I'm about to go to prison, but because I hurt you. Because I treated you like an ATM machine instead of a person. Because I valued money more than I valued our relationship. I'm so sorry." I couldn't tell if it was genuine or another performance. Maybe it was both. Judge Hendricks listened to everything, then spoke. "Ms. Wells, you committed serious crimes against the person who should have been able to trust you most. You exploited your mother's love, forged documents, stole her life savings, and showed no remorse until you were caught. These crimes strike at the heart of family trust and prey upon vulnerable members of our community." She paused. "However, I also recognize that you're young, that this is your first offense, and that you may be capable of rehabilitation. Therefore, I sentence you to 8 years in the Colorado Department of Corrections, with the possibility of parole after serving 4 years if you demonstrate genuine reform and make substantial progress on restitution." 8 years. Jessica would be 40 years old when she got out. Additionally, you will pay full restitution of $340,000 plus interest and court costs, totaling $426,000. This restitution will be a condition of your parole and will follow you for the rest of your life until paid in full. Jessica was sobbing. Brandon sat frozen in his seat. As the bailiff led Jessica away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. I held her gaze, hoping she could see that this wasn't hatred, wasn't revenge. It was the hardest love I'd ever had to show. The media frenzy continued for weeks. I became something of an accidental advocate for elder financial abuse awareness. Other victims reached out to me, sharing their stories, asking for advice. One woman in particular stuck with me. Helen, a 72-year-old widow whose son had stolen her entire retirement savings. She'd never reported it. "I couldn't bear the thought of him going to jail," she told me over coffee. "He's my son. I love him. But now I'm living in a subsidized apartment, working part-time at 62, and he's living in a house I paid for and driving a car I bought. And he still calls asking for more money. Have you said no?" "Once. He stopped talking to me for 6 months. When he finally called again, he acted like nothing had happened and asked if I could loan him $5,000. Her eyes filled with tears. So I said yes, because I'd rather be poor and have contact with my son than comfortable and alone. I reached across the table and took her hand. "You're not alone, and you deserve better than this." That conversation planted a seed. Over the following months, I began speaking at community centers, senior centers, women's groups, anywhere that would have me. I talked about my experience, about the warning signs of financial abuse, about the importance of protecting yourself even from people you love. The response was overwhelming. Everywhere I spoke, women approached me afterward with their own stories. Sons who'd stolen from them, daughters who'd forged their signatures, grandchildren who'd manipulated them out of their savings, and almost none of them had reported it. "I could never send my daughter to jail," one woman told me. "He's all I have left," another said. "What would people think of me?" a third asked. I understood their fear, their guilt, their desperate desire to maintain family connections at any cost. I'd felt all of those things myself. But I also understood something they didn't yet, that protecting abusers only enabled more abuse. That love without boundaries wasn't love at all. It was self-destruction with a pretty name. 6 months after Jessica's sentencing, I received my first letter from her. It arrived in a plain envelope, her handwriting on the outside. I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity won. "Mom," it began, "I don't expect you to respond to this. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know what's been happening with me. Prison is hell. Every single day is a struggle. I'm in a cell with a woman who's here for stabbing her husband. We have one small window that looks out at a concrete wall. The food is terrible. The guards are cruel. I've been attacked twice by other inmates who heard about my case and think I deserve extra punishment for stealing from my mother. But here's the thing, they're right. I do deserve this. Every uncomfortable moment, every sleepless night, every hour of fear and regret. I deserve all of it. I've been going to therapy. The prison has a program for inmates dealing with issues around entitlement and family dynamics. I'm learning things about myself that I don't like, about how I always saw you as a resource rather than a person, about how I convinced myself that being your daughter meant having unlimited access to everything you owned, about how I justified stealing from you by telling myself you'd want me to have it anyway. I'm also taking classes, accounting, of all things. I figured if I'm going to understand what I did to you, I should understand how money actually works, how hard it is to save and invest and build security. It's humbling. I don't know if I'll ever be able to make this right with you. Probably not. But I want you to know that I'm trying. Not because I think it'll reduce my sentence or get me parole. I'm not eligible for 4 more years. I'm trying because I finally understand that I was wrong. Genuinely, truly wrong. Not just wrong for getting caught, but wrong for ever thinking that stealing from you was acceptable. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've been able to rebuild your life and your sense of security. And I hope that someday, maybe years from now, you'll be able to think of me without feeling only anger and betrayal. I love you, Mom. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but it's true. Jessica. I read the letter 3 times, looking for signs of manipulation, of performance, of another attempt to make me feel guilty for holding her accountable. But all I found was what sounded like genuine remorse. I didn't respond immediately. I needed time to process, to decide if I was ready for any kind of contact with Jessica. A month later, I wrote back. My letter was brief. Jessica, thank you for your letter. I'm glad you're using this time to work on yourself and to understand what you did. I'm not ready to forgive you. I may never be ready. What you did caused damage that goes beyond money. It shattered my ability to trust, my sense of safety in the world, my belief that family meant something sacred. But I'm glad you're taking responsibility. Keep doing the work. Keep going to therapy. Keep taking classes. Become someone you can be proud of, even if I'm never able to be proud of you again. I don't hate you. I'm just deeply disappointed in who you became. I hope prison gives you the opportunity to become someone different. Mom. Our correspondence continued slowly, carefully. She would write every few weeks, telling me about her therapy sessions, her classes, the small victories and constant struggles of prison life. I would respond with brief, neutral updates about my life, my work, my advocacy, my healing. A year into her sentence, Jessica wrote, I heard about your speaking engagements. Someone in here showed me an article about you becoming an advocate for elder financial abuse awareness. I'm proud of you, Mom. I know I have no right to be, but I am. You turned the worst thing that happened to you into something that's helping other people. That takes real strength. I didn't respond to that letter for 2 months. When I finally did, I wrote, using my pain to help others has been the only thing that's made any of this bearable. Every person I help, every woman who finds the courage to report abuse because she heard my story, it makes what you did to me feel slightly less pointless. 2 years in, Jessica asked if I would visit. I debated for weeks before agreeing. The prison was exactly what I'd imagined: cold, institutional, oppressive. The visiting room was filled with metal tables and plastic chairs, everything bolted to the floor. Guards watched from elevated positions. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. Jessica appeared in prison clothes, looking thin, but somehow more grounded than she'd been during the trial. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no expensive accessories. Just my daughter, stripped of all pretense. We sat across from each other at one of the metal tables, an awkward silence stretching between us. Thank you for coming, she finally said. I know you didn't have to. No, I didn't. How are you? I'm well. The business is good. I've been traveling a bit, speaking at conferences about elder abuse awareness. I read about that. It's amazing what you're doing. It needed to be done. You're not the only person who's ever stolen from a parent. You're just one of the few whose victims actually press charges. Jessica flinched. I know. I meet women in here who did similar things. Some stole from their parents. Others stole from grandparents, from their kids' college funds, from employers. And almost none of their victims reported them. They just absorbed the loss and tried to move on. That's what most people do. It's easier than facing the judgment that comes with prosecuting family. Was it worth it? The judgment, the criticism, all the people who called you heartless? I considered the question honestly. Yes, because if I'd let you get away with it, what would that have taught you? That stealing was acceptable as long as the victim loved you enough not to report it? That family meant unlimited access to other people's resources? You needed to learn that actions have consequences, Jessica. Real consequences. I understand that now. I wish I'd understood it before I destroyed everything. We talked for an hour. Not about the past. There was nothing left to say. About the theft, the trial, the pain. Instead, we talked about the present. Jessica's therapy, her classes, her plans for when she got out. I think I can help them understand the psychology of it. Help them recognize the warning signs. Help them protect themselves. Use my experience to prevent others from going through what you went through. That would be meaningful work. Do you think people would trust me? Would hire me? I'm going to be a convicted felon. Some people won't. But some will appreciate that you have firsthand knowledge of how financial abuse works from the perpetrator's side. You'll have to work harder, prove yourself more, but it's possible. As our visiting time ended, Jessica reached across the table as if to take my hand, then stopped. "Can I hug you?" I hesitated, then stood. The hug was brief, awkward, both of us unsure of the boundaries. But it was something. Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not healed, not whole, but moving in that direction. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. Over the next 2 years, our relationship slowly, carefully rebuilt itself. Not as it had been, that innocence was gone forever, but as something new, built on honesty and accountability rather than blind trust. Jessica completed multiple certification programs in financial literacy and counseling. She maintained perfect behavior in prison, becoming a mentor to younger inmates, helping them work through their own issues with entitlement and poor judgment. When her parole hearing arrived 4 years into her sentence, I was asked if I wanted to submit a statement. I wrote carefully, acknowledging her efforts at rehabilitation while being clear about the lasting impact of her crimes. She was granted parole with strict conditions: continued therapy, regular restitution payments, 500 hours of community service, and monthly check-ins with her parole officer. When Jessica was released, I didn't attend, but I sent a card to the halfway house where she'd be living. "Congratulations on this new beginning. Use it wisely. Mom." 6 months after her release, Jessica called. "Mom, I found a job. It's with a nonprofit that helps low-income families with financial literacy. The pay isn't great, but the work is meaningful. And they knew about my conviction. I was upfront about everything. And they hired me anyway because the director said my experience gives me credibility in talking about the consequences of financial crimes. I'm glad you found something meaningful. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? I have things I want to tell you in person." We met at a neutral cafe. Jessica arrived first, looking nervous but healthy. She'd gained some weight back, looked more like herself. "Thank you for meeting me," she began. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you. What did you want to say?" She took a breath. "I've spent 4 years thinking about what I did to you. Not just the theft, the betrayal, the entitlement, the complete disregard for you as a person. I treated you like an ATM machine. like your only value was in what you could provide for me financially. And the worst part is, I convinced myself it was okay. That being your daughter gave me rights to your resources, that you owed me because of the sacrifices you'd made raising me. I sipped my coffee, letting her continue. In therapy, I learned that I'd developed this toxic narrative where I was always the victim and you were always the obstacle. You worked too much when I was a kid. Victim. You wouldn't just hand over money when I asked. Victim. You had the audacity to get older and need your savings for your own retirement. Victim. I twisted everything to make myself the wronged party in our relationship. And now I understand that you were just a person trying to live your life and protect your future. You weren't withholding from me. You were protecting yourself. And you had every right to do that. She looked up, meeting my eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, and I'm not sure I ever will. But I'm asking for permission to try to earn back some small measure of your trust over time, through consistent actions, not just words. What does that look like to you? Monthly restitution payments, even though they're court-mandated. Regular updates on my life, without expecting you to engage if you're not ready. Respecting your boundaries completely. And if you're willing, maybe someday being allowed to help with your advocacy work. I think my perspective, as someone who committed financial abuse, could help victims understand the psychology behind it. I studied her carefully, looking for manipulation, for performance. But all I saw was exhaustion, humility, and what looked like genuine remorse. I need time to think about this, I said finally. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, doing the work, whether you ever fully trust me again or not. We parted cordially. No promises, no grand declarations, just a small opening where before there had been a locked door. Over the following year, Jessica kept her word. She made regular restitution payments, small amounts, $50 or $100 a month, all she could afford on her nonprofit salary. She sent occasional updates about her work, her life, her continued therapy, and she never pushed for more than I was willing to give. I began attending some of her financial literacy workshops, sitting in the back, watching her teach young women about protecting their assets, recognizing manipulation, understanding their worth. She was good at it, speaking with the authority of someone who'd learned these lessons the hardest way possible. After one workshop, a young woman approached Jessica, crying. My boyfriend has been pressuring me to add his name to my car title. I felt guilty for saying no, but after hearing you speak, I realize he's trying to manipulate me. Jessica spent 30 minutes counseling her, helping her see the warning signs, encouraging her to trust her instincts and set boundaries. Watching my daughter use her painful experience to help others felt like witnessing a small miracle. Slowly, carefully, I let Jessica back into my life. Not as we were before. That relationship was gone forever. But as something new, built on honesty and accountability rather than assumption and entitlement. 5 years after her sentencing, we had dinner together at my home for the first time. Thomas joined us, along with his wife Emma and their 3 young children. It was awkward at moments, careful, but also genuine. Jessica played with her nieces and nephew, tears in her eyes as she told them stories. When they asked why they'd never met Aunt Jessica before, Thomas gave them a simple, honest answer. Aunt Jessica made some very serious mistakes and had to go away for a while to learn from them. But now she's back and working hard to be a better person. The children accepted this easily, as children do. Jessica looked at me across the table. Gratitude and regret mingled in her expression. Later, as we cleaned up together, Jessica said quietly, I know I'll never fully repay what I took from you. Not just the money, the security, the trust, the years we lost. But I want you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying. I know, I said. And that's enough for now. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. It was something more complex. Acceptance, hope, and the recognition that people could change if the consequences were real and the effort was sustained. My advocacy work continued to grow. I published a book called The Price of Family, One mother's story of elder abuse and justice. It became a resource for social workers, attorneys, families navigating similar situations, and victims trying to find the courage to report abuse. I received thousands of messages. Many thanked me for giving them courage. Some criticized my choices, calling me heartless for prosecuting my own daughter. And a few, heartbreakingly, told me they wished they'd had my strength, but it was too late now. Their resources were gone. Their abusers faced no consequences, and they were left with nothing but regret. Those messages fueled my continued work. Every speech I gave, every training session I conducted, every person I helped, it was for them, for the silent victims who needed to know they weren't alone, and they didn't deserve abuse simply because they were older or because the abuser was family. I heard Dorothy tell a person named Dorothy, and she said to her in an elevator conversation, Dorothy is 28 years old, whose daughter had stolen her entire retirement savings, nearly $500,000, to fund a lifestyle Dorothy's daughter felt entitled to. But the truth is, I was ashamed that I'd raised someone capable of this, ashamed that I hadn't seen it coming, ashamed to admit that my daughter valued money more than she valued me. Your book helped me understand that the shame was never mine to carry. Thank you for your courage. I wrote back to Dorothy, and we began a correspondence that lasted months. Eventually, with my encouragement and support, she filed a police report. Her daughter was charged, convicted, and sentenced to 6 years in prison. I'm 78, Dorothy told me. I may not live to see her released, but I'll die knowing that I stood up for myself, that I refused to be a victim just because my abuser was my daughter. You gave me that gift, Catherine. Thank you. On my 65th birthday, Thomas and Emma hosted a celebration at my home. Jessica came, bringing a gift she'd clearly spent weeks selecting, a framed photo of us from when she was 5, standing in my garden, both of us laughing. On the back, she'd written, "To the strongest woman I know, thank you for loving me enough to let me fall, and for teaching me how to stand back up." I cried when I read it. Not from grief this time, from hope. That evening, as guests mingled in my living room, I stood at the window, overlooking the garden I'd tended for so many years. This house, the one Jessica had tried to sell, the one that represented everything I'd built, was still mine. My security was restored, my future was stable, and most importantly, my self-respect was intact. Jessica approached, standing beside me at the window. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. About how close I came to losing everything, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. About how choosing justice over easy forgiveness was the hardest thing I've ever done. About how it was also the rightest thing. I turned to look at her. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that you made choices that led us here. But do I regret holding you accountable? No, because if I hadn't, you'd still be the person who could steal from her mother without genuine remorse. And I wouldn't be the person who could stand up for herself, even when it meant standing against someone she loved. Jessica nodded slowly. I'm still paying restitution. I'll be paying it for at least another 15 years, probably longer. But I want you to know that every payment feels like progress, not punishment. It's a tangible reminder that I'm making amends slowly but surely. We stood together in silence, watching the sun set over my garden. The roses were in full bloom now, spring settling in, renewal all around us. It wasn't perfect reconciliation. It wasn't a fairy tale ending where everything was magically fixed. But it was real, and it was honest, and it was built on a foundation of accountability rather than enabling. Looking back over the 6 years since that devastating phone call, I understood that I'd faced a fundamental choice between two types of love. There was the comfortable love that protects and enables, that shields people from consequences in the name of family loyalty. And there was the fierce love that holds people accountable, that says, I love you enough to let you face what you've done because I believe you can become better. I'd chosen the fierce love. It had cost me years of pain, public criticism, family drama, and the comfortable fantasy of a perfect mother-daughter relationship. But it had given me something more valuable: integrity, self-respect, purpose, and ultimately the real possibility of an authentic relationship with my daughter. Jessica still had years of restitution payments ahead of her. She still had a felony conviction that would follow her for life. Our relationship would always carry the scars of her betrayal, but she was rebuilding her life on honest foundations, helping others avoid her mistakes, and slowly earning back a measure of the trust she'd destroyed. And I had built something meaningful from catastrophic pain: a voice for victims, a framework for accountability, a community of people who understood that choosing justice over easy forgiveness wasn't cruelty. It was love in its most challenging, most necessary form. My phone buzzed with a message: another victim of elder financial abuse, asking for advice on whether to report her son's theft. I recognized the fear in her message, the guilt, the desperate hope that maybe if she just forgave him, things would go back to normal. I knew from experience they wouldn't. Forgiveness without accountability wasn't healing. It was enabling. It was giving permission for the abuse to continue. I typed my response: "You deserve protection. You deserve justice. And your son deserves to face the consequences of his choices, even though it's painful. Especially because it's painful. That's how people learn and change." Jessica read over my shoulder and nodded. "That's what you gave me, Mom. The chance to learn and change. I hated you for it at the time, but now I understand it was the greatest gift you could have given me." I looked at my daughter, this woman who'd once stolen from me, who'd tried to destroy my security, who'd valued money over our relationship. And I saw someone different now. Not perfect, not entirely trustworthy, but genuinely working to become better. "The work isn't done," I said. "You're still building back trust, still making amends, still proving through actions, not just words." "I know, and I'll keep doing it for as long as it takes." As the evening wound down and guests began leaving, Thomas pulled me aside. "Mom, I'm proud of you. I know this hasn't been easy, but you handled it with such strength and grace." I didn't feel strong most of the time. I felt terrified and heartbroken and constantly second-guessing myself. "That's what made it strong. You did the hard thing even when you were scared. You chose justice even when it cost you everything comfortable. And look what you built from it. You've helped hundreds of women find their voice, stand up for themselves, refuse to be victims. That's your legacy, Mom. Not what Jessica did to you, but what you built from it." He was right. I had transformed betrayal into advocacy, loss into learning, heartbreak into a mission that would outlive me. I'd taken the worst experience of my life and turned it into something that protected and empowered countless others. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my quiet house and reflected on the journey. From that shocking phone call 6 years ago to this moment, it had been the hardest period of my life. Harder than raising children alone. Harder than building a business from nothing. Harder than any challenge I'd ever faced. But I'd survived. More than survived. I'd emerged stronger, clearer, more purposeful than I'd ever been. Jessica still had a long road ahead. Years of restitution payments. A lifetime of rebuilding trust. The permanent mark of a felony conviction. But she was on that road, moving forward honestly for the first time in her adult life. And I had my life back, my security, my home, my future, and most importantly, my self-respect. I'd stood up for myself when it mattered most. I'd refused to be a victim, even when the perpetrator was my own child. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. Looking out at my garden in the moonlight, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: complete peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I'd made the hard choices that aligned with my values. I'd chosen truth over comfort, justice over convenience, and self-respect over the false peace of pretending everything was fine. My daughter had tried to steal my future. Instead, she'd inadvertently given me a purpose more meaningful than anything I could have imagined. She'd forced me to find a strength I didn't know I possessed. She'd pushed me to use my pain to protect others. I didn't just survive my daughter's betrayal. I transformed it into a movement, a mission, a legacy of empowerment for vulnerable people everywhere. And that, I realized, was the truest victory. Not the guilty verdict, not the restitution payments, not even the slow rebuilding of our relationship. The victory was in refusing to let Jessica's crimes define me as a victim. Instead, I'd defined myself as a survivor, an advocate, and a voice for the countless silent victims who needed someone to show them that standing up for yourself, even against family, wasn't selfish. It was necessary. It was powerful. It was the foundation of a life lived with integrity. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I felt grateful. Grateful for the strength I'd discovered. Grateful for the community I built. Grateful for friends who'd stood by me. Grateful even for the painful lessons that had brought me to this place of clarity and purpose. And yes, even grateful for Jessica. Not for what she'd done, but for who she was becoming, because I'd loved her enough to hold her accountable. Tomorrow, I would wake up and continue the work, speaking, writing, helping, advocating. But tonight, I would rest in the knowledge that I'd done the right thing, even when it was the hardest thing. And that was enough.